Welcome back to the Loud Sound Epicenter podcast. We are back with, of course, Thomas 777. Good to be talking to you, man. How are
Yeah,
you?
likewise, man. I'm glad to be back on the saddle. Like I was saying before we went live, I apologize for being dark. I mean, not just in terms of content production, but I realize I haven't been getting back to people, and my alibi is I was really sick, man. I think people can still kind of hear it on me a little bit. But yeah, I apologize for that. I mean, everybody's been really understanding, but I feel bad because I mean, people are kind enough to subscribe, and just on principle, we've got to maintain a regular content schedule. Otherwise, we're just not really in the game. So yeah, it's great, man, and going a lot. We haven't done one of these streams for a minute. One of these just kind of like casual live streams, and I think Christmas Eve that seems kind of like the thing to do. People are just kind of like feeling good, sipping eggnog. Shit, man, I was gonna go out. I go to the grocery store every few days, because I'm kind of like a Japanese housewife or something. I just buy like a few things at a time. Then I'm gonna cook. But and when I do the cooking around here, but I'm like, fuck that, man. I just like ordered in some food, man. It's like, and that takes a lot, man. I'm definitely not like a little bitch about the cold, but it's literally like with wind chill, it feels like 30 below. Like I was telling people, um, it hurt my eyeballs. Like I could feel like my eyeballs freezing, and I had this horrible vision of like my eyeballs flash freezing, and then like disintegrating into smithereens, and I'd be like screaming like a little bitch because like my eyes exploded. But I don't think that's gonna happen. But it's cold like when your fucking eyes are freezing. They're supposed to be gooey, man. They're not supposed to be like frozen. That's all. Like I don't know where I was going with that. It's other than to say that it's cold. But yeah, yeah. This is a good night to be indoors and like cozy and like doing our thing. I guess that's where I was going with that.
That's right. That's right. Well, it's an honor. And we have our next panelist, one of our favorites here. Let me bring him on in for our Friday night extravaganza.
Yeah, hell
American
yeah, man.
Podcast. What's going on, man?
Oh, what's up, man? It's just
Good
freezing
to see you
cold.
on deck,
Like
man.
4 degrees here with wind.
Yeah, man. No, it's like coast to coast. It's cold like coast to coast, unless except for where Ace is at. I assume it's still nice in Los Angeles. I mean, it never really gets like it gets miserably hot out there. I don't think it ever gets properly cold. I mean, I spent a lot of my early life there. I have some authority to speak on that. But no, I'm stoked you're on deck, man. It's good to see you. I was hoping maybe Mr. Obama would join us, but he's shy about that for some reason. Like I say that with all respect. I'm not being mean, but I don't know why he's like some like shy debutante or something. Like it's hard to get him to come out of his shell. Um,
Well, I just spoke with the man prior to, and he's doing great. He's working on a new article. For those of you that don't know, I try to shill it. His Substack article has some political stuff, philosophy stuff, pop
no,
culture.
his
So
Substack's awesome, man. That's why I'm always happy when he joins us. See, I mean, he's a good friend and he's a great dude, but his content is top notch, man. No doubt. I can't recommend it enough.
and shout out to Brandon in chat, my best friend. Good to hear from him again. And I would like to plug Mr. Obama's Twitter and Substack, because if people are fans of this program,
Yeah.
I can't see much of can't see how they haven't come across the man himself. So let's
No, that's
dial
another
that
reason I
in.
try and get him on to do these things. I mean, I get it, man. I mean, I'm not exactly an extrovert myself, but he takes it to extremes. But no, he's great, man, and he's one of the few people I always learn stuff from. I mean, not because I'm like so smart or something, but I do have a pretty wide reading list, like within my subject area, and he pretty regularly turns me on to sources I've just like never heard of, and that's a rare benefit. And yeah, his Substack. I mean, I've subscribed with Substack since he launched it. I mean, it's always been good. Don't get me wrong, but he's really, really upped his game lately. It's really good. I'm not just saying that, to help a brother out or whatever. He's yeah, he's one of the few. I mean, I subscribe to a huge amount of freaking Substacks, but because I want to support everybody who's in the game, but he's one of about half a dozen like I really look forward to when he drops new stuff. Like I mean it, and So I can't recommend his stuff enough. Even if longer form stuff isn't really your thing, it's never dull. Believe me, like it's worth the $5 a month. And like I'm always saying, you can't afford $5 a month. You're a fucking hobo, and like we don't need hobos among us anyway. So fuck you.
They are not among the mob. You're saying
No,
that's a good
man,
point.
no. I don't ride with hobos, man.
All righty. Well, hey, it looks like we have some Tennessee veterans in chat. We got May, who you were meeting. What was
Yeah,
that, a month or
man.
so
Yeah,
ago?
she's a sweetheart, man.
So we love our chatters in chat. Um, I wanted to bring up the fact that I was reading some David Irving earlier this
Always
week,
a good use of time.
and I sent it over to you, Thomas, and you
You
seem to
did.
have a few words on it. I was curious if how long you've kind of been on that train since I was just kind of delving into it. Probably for the most I've done of that, ever beforehand. So
I mean,
uh,
Irving's books, you can at different stages in his career, and I mean, the guy's been writing since he was about your age. The Destruction of Dresden. I mean, he published that. He got the idea for it when he was working at Thyssen Steel. I think it was Thyssen. It was not Krupp, but wherever he was working as a steel worker in Germany. You know, when he was like college age, because he wanted to develop linguistic fluency, and the only way you can truly accomplish that is by immersion. And by accident of fate, Irving always had this really strong interest in aviation, and he's a brilliant guy. Like when he never finished his university degree, but he was studying he was studying physics, and he had a huge interest in aviation, like the science of it and things. And so he's reading some aviation magazine, and at Thyssen or whatever steel firm he was working at, he lived in the like the single men's dorm, and that was not unusual in those days. When you had terrestrial manufacturing as the backbone of national economies, for like workers to like live like on site in like a men's dorm and like a women's dorm. And so his dorm mate was like this older dude who was like a German guy. He's like, yeah, if you're he saw Irving reading a magazine about like strategic aviation in World War II. And he's like, I was at Dresden, and Irving's like, well, what does that mean? Because it's not been like widely publicized. And so this guy's like, well, it was totally annihilated. He's like, I barely got out alive, and he had a bunch of like photographs and stuff, and other like artifacts, and Irving's like, wow, this has got to be made in. The story needs to be told, basically. And I mean, the whole thing blew up. It was like serialized, and I think the Evening Standard. I mean, that's put him on the map. But in any event, that book's very much a documentary, and it's also it's 1.5 kind of like documentary of the city of Dresden during the war, and finally its ultimate horrible fate. And it's kind of like one like interspersed within there. It's the oral testimony of Bomber Harris, who Irving became very close to. And I mean, Harris ordered the mission, and he presided over it at an operational level. Okay, I mean, that's not just a joke when people are like, oh, Irving's book on Dresden's been discredited. It's like, well, the man who ordered the bombing fucking says otherwise. Okay, so I take his word over Debbie Schussel or Dumpy Ms. Lipstadt. But in any event, Irving's books all kind of have a different tenor. Hitler's War and Churchill's War, there's commonalities between like some of these books that are properly paired, but the Goebbels book that you're diving into, what's fascinating about that is what I indicated, and I'll hand it over to you guys in a minute so it wasn't being long-winded, but Goebbels was a prolific diarist from the time he was literally like a 10-year-old kid. And the history of the National Socialist movement, a lot of what is known about it from within comes from the fact that Goebbels' diaries from 1919 until literally about 10 days before he committed suicide were kept in these, volumes upon volumes upon volumes of diaries. And Goebbels had the foresight to have them secured in this bank vault in Berlin. At the 11th hour, like when he came to when he came to Berlin with Magda and with the children to meet his destiny with the Fuhrer. He had his diaries secured in this vault, and when the NKVD found them, they cataloged them, and they literally apparently locked them away. It's like in the Raiders of the Lost Ark or something, right? That's literally what they did. They just locked it away in NKVD, and then we became KGB archives. Now, when the Berlin Wall came down, there's this kind of mad dash by guys like Robert Conquest to get access to the Soviet archives, and like they weren't really interested in Third Reich stuff. They were interested in what what the truth was of attrition in the Gulag and these kind of enduring mysteries of the Cold War intelligence game and things like that. But Irving, of course, Irving wanted to know everything the FSB, the successor of the KGB had. And Irving, I've got my own ideas on how Irving was able to gain access to the Russian Federation. And that's kind of a tangent. I don't want to get into that unless people are curious about my theory. We can come back to that in a minute. But in any event, Irving very much was able to kind of grease the skids in gaining access to the FSB archives. And apparently he said to some female clerk, it just, it would be great to have some of, Goebbels' direct testimony, his writings. And she said something like, oh, we have all the Goebbels diaries, just like matter of factly. Like, they gave him like access to all of them. And, they've been, I guess a good amount of them have been transferred to microfilm or microfiche, whatever I use that medium a handful of times, and it's painstaking and it sucks. But it's like the miniaturized, like I'd probably be yours never even seen this, but that's how a lot of newspaper and print periodicals were cataloged or archived rather in libraries. But so long story short, and then this was a huge sore point for these hack court historians like Ian Kershaw, because Irving was the man who got like first crack at the Goebbels diaries. And then subsequently, like the Russians became very kind of mercurial in who they'd let access them. The point being, the biography of Goebbels is fascinating because it's day to day. It's Irving. It's Goebbels' actual writing, and then Irving putting it in providing context for what's underway in the Reich and in the war and everything else. Based on the pages that he's translated and analyzed. So it's just a fascinating book, and there's not really anything people can say to impeach it, because it's like, well, yeah, some of what is contained therein obviously is Herr Dr. Goebbels' subjective opinions on what was going on around him. And Goebbels was a very prejudiced guy. I don't mean prejudice in the colloquial sense, although he was probably that too. But he had a very rigid kind of ideological interpretation of the world. Okay. But nevertheless, I think the subtitle of the book you got is Mastermind of the Third Reich, and that sounds melodramatic or bombastic. I think that it's actually quite true. Okay. And modern media, as we know it, political media at least, was very much invented by Goebbels. So that's a fascinating book. Even if you're not like a Third Reich head like me, and even if revisionism isn't really your thing, if you want like the best kind of insider's view you can get of the German Reich, is Irving's biography of Goebbels, and probably pair it with Hitler's War. I mean, obviously that's all about Hitler, OKW, and quite literally, the waging of the war from 1939 until the final days in May, 6 years subsequent. But yeah, I realized I was long-winded, but there's a lot that warrants a wide discussion. But yeah, that's great, man. That's a great use of time. Whatever your current kind of like research interests are, that'll help you.
Well, the media aspect does seem to be something that's underrated. I know some people, because of recent political developments, have been talking about the microphones that were used during that time period. Apparently, some rappers still use that to this day, or it's had an influence on the tech to this day. And a lot of people probably don't even are aware of the fact that it goes back to that time period, because that was sort of the influential period of branding politicians as celebrities, using it as a marketing tool. So that was just fascinating on that front, because obviously I think I may have mentioned another book that had to do with German cinema, the fact that American Hollywood was only like 10 or 15 years old at that point during the that mid-century German period. And so this German cinema seemed to almost be rivaling that almost better than the American counterpart.
No, it was. like I was talking to my dad about this the other day. Kind of the sovereign American. People talk about the sovereign American cultural medium being the novel, and I mean, there's great American novelists, like Mark Twain, first among them. But film. When we think of American cultural product, we really think of film, okay? But at the same time, yeah, there's a dialogue between American and German cinema, and there always has been, and that's why Fritz Lang's Metropolis is one of my very favorite movies, and Fritz Lang's M, which is a compliment piece. And I'm always raising the point that some of the real footage of the Weimar Street that were incorporated into the film, you see it's like brown shirts like fighting with KPD guys, and those aren't actors. Okay, that's what was really underway. So I mean, it's kind of art imitates life, imitates art, but you see it even decades after the war. Like I'm always making the point, corny as it might be, or corny as movies like Jaws and like the original Star Wars may be, they were hugely impactful in terms of convention. Not just in terms of the business model of Hollywood, but the aesthetic convention and particularly the production technique. And if there's in the original Star Wars, a huge amount of stuff is lifted from like Lenny Riefenstahl's footage. Okay, really trying for the will, like literally the end shot where it's Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, and Chewbacca. They're getting like the medals. That's lifted directly from Trying for the Will. Okay, when it's Hitler, Goering, and Hess. Like that exact shot. Okay, and I mean it. So yeah, there's an interesting give and take between German and American cinema. Well, it's also why, like, people made a lot about how Hitler was a huge film aficionado, and at the Bergdorf, like he was, he'd always show movies, and we all loved King Kong, but he also liked those Howard Hawks epics. I mean, some of which were better than others. Rio Grande, and but he also, I can never remember the name of it, but Hawks was like, Hawks was a huge not as much as what's his name? Not as much as Howard Hughes, but Hawks liked he liked aviation, and some of these early movies, including Howard Hughes made his own like World War I epic. I think it was Flying Hellcats, and the script was forgettable, but that pioneered aerial photography, and of course that was brand new, and Lenny Riefenstahl pioneered that technique. Like speaking of Trying for the Will again, where it's Hitler's aircraft descending to Nuremberg, and you see it like coming through the clouds. It's the perspective like from inside the aircraft. Like we take that stuff for granted these days, but like that had never been done before. So I mean, but that's part of why. I mean, I've written long form on this, and included in my Nuremberg manuscript that I'm working on, which I hope to drop in the spring. Berlin, after 1933, the die was cast, in my opinion, and Hitler viewed the New Dealers and Roosevelt in America as Germany's mortal enemy, and vice versa. I mean, yeah, there was a Manichaean, kind of inevitable, and incredibly intense enmity between the German Reich and the Soviet Union, and Bolshevism being its dialectical opposite. I mean, obviously that the degree of enmity there was profound beyond what's normal. I mean, even in a circumstance, even under conditions of political crisis, but there's a certain morally detached inevitability to that. And kind of both sides, both the communists and the National Socialists, sort of recognize that. In terms of real, like, deep moral enmity, the best way I can think of is to describe it existed between like New Deal, like Roosevelt's New Deal America and the German Reich, and there was common like cultural platforms of competition there, and things like that, and yeah, that's very, very true. I'm gonna dip into the restroom real quick, and I'm gonna have a smoke real quick. So, and plus, I don't want to monopolize the conversation. I'll be back in like 2-3 minutes. Okay.
No worries.
Yeah, and speak up, AP. Like we haven't heard from you yet.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I just had some audio
No,
issues
he's sorry.
in the background.
But yeah. No, man, we want to hear what you got to say. But I'll be back in like 2 minutes.
All right. Well, American Poppies, I mean, you and Thomas have been going through some content too. How was that going through some of the, I mean, I guess that was more American history, but I'm sure some people might have missed some of those because it's kind of a specific topic. But how was that? Some of your most recent ones?
I think they're fairly good, actually. Thomas gives a really good in-depth discussion about them and kind of like the deeper background that you just aren't going to find from anybody else. I mean, the Team Man is just great for giving historical backgrounds from a non-woke perspective, which you just can't find anywhere. So it's always great for him when he does that.
Yeah, and you and I are overdue for a John Birch Society episode. We got to get cracking at that because, like you said, it seems like there's only a handful of channels that have touched it. So I'm sure we could make good use of that. And I'm sure Thomas could probably speak on some of the lore there, but maybe we'll even grab him on board for citations. But yeah, that was one of the kind of underreported political events in America that made me realize, wait a second, my entire perspective of politics is people who weren't even allowed in politics, or people not allowing rather people into politics. So that was, even though that group, like, we don't really mention them as like those are the people I got my views from, but they were almost like an example of what could have been, what could have been the right. And even if some of it was excessive, the fact that they were out there, that there was a group that was not National Review, I'm sure you and I will probably delve into some of that in the near future. So yeah, that's very interesting stuff. I don't want to neglect the chat, which it does seem to have some. We got Charlemagne in chat. I'm thinking we're back. Who got his YouTube channel back? When I saw that, I was like, oh my goodness, I have not binged all the videos. How am I going to see these again? But it was he saw. I guess YouTube was gracious enough to give it back to him. So. YouTube, our guys, our YouTube redemption arc, but that's very cool to see that. I was seeing that on Twitter, and AP here. I'll send the link back so that we can have our Christian Slater pump up the volume panel, so we can have our Howard Stern show, and then we can address the peanut gallery, the much needed peanut gallery. Hey, Paul W. Hall, to speak on that. I had the opportunity to see some spokeswoman on behalf of the John Birch Society. It's this broad, and she was I think it's called the New American. That's like the outlet where they talk about political commentary, and she, it's very like Reagan tier, BoomerCon stuff. So I think John Birch Society has been infiltrated. I remember there was even this local GOP thing that was saying, oh, you got to check out the John Birch Society. They got some content. And I was like, whoa, are they like outing themselves as like they're openly radical? And it's like, no, they've actually like watered down a lot of the views since they they took a hit at Eisenhower.
They're weird.
Yeah.
They're a weird organization, man, and their staying power is weird. And they've had more they had more credibility and cachet in the Midwest, and specifically like in Greater Chicagoland, than in a lot of places. There's like something weirdly Midwestern to their whole jive, and there's still the Main Street newsstand, which is still in operation. They got reams of magazines, traditional print magazines. I mean, they've been in operation for decades. But I was there just the other day. They still have the New American on the shelf. That's the Bircher magazine. So I mean, somebody's buying it. But they're very weird, man. I mean, it's like Tommy Metzger said, back in the 70s and 80s, the Birchers always were, kind of like a Semitically correct, like anti-communist outfit. I mean, Yaki profoundly hated them for reasons that should be obvious. I think they're just kind of typical rubes, man. But they what's interesting is what kind of put him on the map in the later Cold War. Another example of Reagan's first term really kind of mirroring, like Eisenhower's America. I mean, in some ways in a contrived way, in other ways in like a legitimate, like apocalyptic way, or not legitimate, like organic, spontaneous apocalyptic way. Larry McDonald, the congressman, he was on KAL flight 007, which was shot down over the Soviet Far East by the Russian Air Force. He was a John Birch, like a lifelong John Birch member, and he became something of a martyr. I mean, that whole incident was horrible, and that really, that was in the midst of Able Archer era. So this had profound implications for kind of tanking U.S.-Soviet relations and creating a very dangerous circumstance. But I mean, it's also McDonald became like a martyr, to like the right, like kind of across the board. Everybody from kind of like kosher cons, to like white nationalists, everybody in between. And because he was like this Bircher, he wasn't just like a member of the organization; he was like a very active member, and I think McDonald was from Georgia. So I mean, the Birchers they retained some clout there, more than some territories of the electoral map. But and then they got a new lease in life under the Clinton era. Like I'd pick up their magazines to like flip. I mean, I read all kinds of stuff like now as I did then. And during the Clinton era, they got a little bit more ballsy and a little bit more edgy because they really kind of transitioned their content and kind of the target of their opprobrium, to Clinton and the Reno Justice Department. They became big like Second Amendment people. They became big defenders of they started striking a lot of kind of like neo-Jeffersonian postures. They were tepidly like friendly to the militia movement, like stuff like that. But even so, like it was, they throw in like token anti-fascist bullshit, and they'd redact any real like serious adult discussion of ethno-sectarian matters. One of the fellas, it was not Mr. Obama, but it was a guy from that kind of coterie. I mean, like the other day, like on Twitter or on Telegram, I can't remember. He asked me what I thought of Instauration magazine, and that was a pretty dope magazine. It was far more like it was kind of in between like the Bircher stuff and something like Tom Metzger's war newsletter, like in the 90s. Or actually, it was kind of like a lighter version of National Vanguard, like the National Alliance newsletter or magazine. But if you're looking for something that's not, kind of that's not, that doesn't have like racialism on the brain, but is more serious than like Bircher stuff, like from the era, like Instauration's worth looking at. That ran from the 70s until the 90s. But yeah, I thought about. I'll get back to you in a minute. I realize I'm rambling, but the people have written off the Birchers before, and I mean they seriously got written off like after 1989 because it's like all these guys have is, they're just a Cold War pack, and they've got nothing else. But they reinvented themselves, and their optics, what they are pretty good. Like I said, I think the content's corny as hell, but the like I said, this was literally like a week and a half ago. I was flipping through the New American. It's like professionally laid out. Like, like you can tell like a lot of thought went into it, and the guys they have, I realize it's a lot easier to produce something that looks, semi-professional these days than it was even 20 years ago. But, they're not like total schlubs, like running it. I mean, there's guys who actually do have some decent like production shops. So, I mean, they're getting money from somewhere is my point. I think they're one of these. I think they're one of these kind of like perennial American packs that that just has like 9 lives or something. But I mean, obviously this nowadays, at least what I saw from this issue the other day, it's just they're just raking the Biden administration over the coals. I mean, which is well placed. Don't get me wrong, but that's kind of like, I mean, that's kind of like low hanging fruit, But
right,
I don't know. But they had more clout than people think, though. Like in the 50s, really through the 70s, like they did, like there was, like at least at the local level, and in some jurisdictions where localism could, sway national contests. they had some power to do that, man. They weren't, you can say that they were cranks or whatever, or you can say that, they, or people on our side could say, and they'd be right, this is just like watered down, conservative and kind of bullshit. But they did have like some power, man. That is true.
Yeah, maybe they are comparable to like the Rockford Institute, some of the paleocon stuff towards the 90s. Maybe that's with maybe like slightly better optics, because they weren't they didn't really have, like you said, that tint that may have made them disreputable in some mainstream circles. So it's probably just one of the many groups that is probably in the dark.
Well, it's also, I'm always I invoke the example of the 1980 presidential election a lot. I mean, not just because that was a critical year, particularly as regards, a power paradigm shift within Washington, as regards, the national security apparatus. I've started getting into this in the Cold War series with Pete Canones, but it's also that's when the Republican Party was in a strange position, sort of like they are now. Because I mean, this was the post Watergate, post Ford, and Ford, make no mistake, Ford was just a placeholder. They didn't, they were kind of treading water. But also there was this ongoing issue of like what trajectory, defense policy would take. Whether it was clear that like détente was dead after 1979, but if you look at the presidential debates, both like the primary season debates, as well as the Reagan v. Carter debates, you can tell that like there's a lot of dog whistle stuff that Reagan's dropping of concern, not so much to the John Birchers, but the people like them. And this was stuff outside of the mainstream then, and which in those days, the only game in town was television media. Like, my point is that this kind of stuff, these places, to your point, like the Rockford Institute in the 90s, and like the John Birch Society and Enduring Capacity, and like the Council of Conservative Citizens, man, like locally at least, like they did shape like the trajectory of policy discourse. I mean, maybe not so much substantively, on the national stage, but like there's not just some like left-wing talking point or some kind of like paranoid fever dream of like the Mother Jones fuckwads that like, oh, these are a bunch of John Birchers and white supremacists, man. They're like dog whistle signaling their constituents. Like, that does happen, and especially on the right, because there is no like real American right, but what passes for it, they've got to like tread very carefully in what they openly state. They don't have the same sort of freedom they don't have the same kind of freedom to get loose lips the way their nominal opposition does. I mean, this should all be pretty clear. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah. Some questions here in chat.
Yeah,
also,
I was about to say.
I wanted to bring this to your attention. I don't remember if we've talked about this before. This was a book I was thinking of earlier, going back to the German cinema. This was the book that I have, and it's written by this lady. But I didn't get through much of it, but it was kind of interesting going through. It seemed like mostly.
I've not read it, but I've seen it.
Yeah, so it was.
It looks compelling, and they paired this book by this. There's a book by this dude named Frederick Spotts. He's like an art historian, and it's Hitler and the Power of Aesthetics. And it's a pretty value-neutral book, man, for as mainstream as it is. But I noticed that it gets paired with that book that you just called up a lot. I've read the Spotts book, and it's dope. It's very, very good. I've not read that cinema book. But like I said, man, like freaking George Lucas, was prone to lifting Leni Riefenstahl shots, like with the exact like set pieces and things. I mean, there's like cinema gets kind of like a pass in some ways, I mean, maybe because people consider it like, so they consider cinema to be kind of like the brass tacks of it, to be like, left to the interpretive faculties of the viewer or something. I don't know. I mean, that'd be you could write an entire paper or book on that unto itself. But yeah, that looks really interesting, man. And in this mob, we like film history and all things related. So yeah,
That's
That'd
right.
be great for a freaking dedicated podcast episode, man.
Yeah. Hey, maybe a little preview there.
There's a lot of stuff. I told you that the guys from Chicago Hoods agreed to come on the pod, and they also want to like shoot some footage and stuff with us, man. And there's some other really exciting things on the horizon. I'm not just like plugging my own shit, but I am excited about it. And so yeah, a lot of after the new year, we got a lot of exciting opportunities for collaboration with people who bring a lot to the table. And yeah, man, if we can locate some people who've got some kind of practical hands-on expertise with film, either film history stuff in academia or like actually working on the production side of Hollywood, that would be outstanding. But even if it's just us kind of like shooting the breeze about cultural trends in cinema, that would be worthwhile. Yeah, no, I gotta raise up in about 10 minutes. That's why I wanted to see if there's questions for us. But you and AP should keep going, man.
Yeah, no worries. Joe Bucket has been he's been asking if you're if you're gonna do an episode about the Sadies. I know that's a tall order, but
I mean, just generally, like, I mean, that they're half the population. So there's like, you kind of got to narrow it down. I mean, like what I mean, I've been trying to get Catherine D to come on the podcast. I mean, she's down at some point. I mean, it's hello, Kathy D, if you're watching. But I'm gonna keep like, but I mean, she's genuinely busy, but I will at some point I'll be able to pin her down and bring her on the pod, and if we got questions about the mysterious ways of females, like we can ask her. I mean, I ask her those kinds of questions anyway, but like we'll have an opportunity to like ask her like with a wider audience, maybe. I don't know. That's all I can say, man. I don't know a lot about females. I mean, like I think I'm learning as I age, but I'm not an expert in that field, man.
Yeah, no, it's quite a dense academic topic.
Yeah, man, and there's a lot there. Yeah,
right, exactly. Let me see here. Someone Big Brain Content, a regular here, asking what's your hairdo called? Is there a?
I don't have a hairdo, man. I just got like long hair and like I just go high and tight on the sides and the back. Like what's your hairdo called? Is it called like the brontosaurus dick? Like I mean, what's anything called? I don't know, man. I like go like this and like I shave it around, man.
Yeah, there you go. Here I was going to find something here. All right. What is? Okay, thank you, Alternative Avenue, saving us there for a sec.
How long have I had long hair? I mean, pretty much my entire life, man. And I go through phases, especially when I was younger, when I go like real short, especially like in the summertime. Like I go like high and tight like here, but then I basically have like a brush cut, just like a little longer than a crew cut on top. But then finally I'm like, it's like I'm not gonna go back to having like a 9-to-5 job, and I just reached the age where it's like I stopped caring about being like like a normal person. So it's like man, like I'm just gonna like keep my hair long, and I'm gonna ride under like the hack and cruise and like the bloodstained banner and like do my thing and like be myself. Like corny as that might sound, like be yourself. Owing to the conditions we're under politically, that can actually be like a profound form of dissent. Like not in a lame way, like oh yeah, go out and like be a freaking FAG, like figuratively or literally, but if like being yourself entails being right wing or like riding under the swastika or St. Andrew's cross, that can be a pretty profound dissident statement. So there's that too. But yeah, I've always for my whole life, like on and off, and that's the way it shall remain.
And then probably one of the last questions before I ask something here. asking for what's your advice to the youngins? I guess the Zoomers. I guess to people of my demographic. Some after having so much experience, I guess. What would be your pitch to
I
the
mean, parenting advice, raising sons. I mean, I don't have kids of my own. I think like a good friend of mine the other day, because like I was telling him that like, you know, sometimes guys approach me like asking me for like marital advice, and it's like I've never been married, man. You know, so like sometimes I feel like I'm not qualified to speak on such things. And my friend is like, well, he's like, you know, maybe you're in the role of a priest. You know, you're like a chaste guy who doesn't have a family, but you know, people seek you out sometimes for answers to moral questions. I like kids a lot. I think kids are awesome. That's really the only thing I lament about never being married and having a family of my own. It's like sometimes I wish that I had kids, but what I can say is this: you know, children watch and absorb everything, and particularly fathers, like for boys and girls, but especially for boys, like loom incredibly large. They're watching everything you do, and they're interpreting everything you do, and things that you don't think are important, like looms large in the minds of children. You know, particularly if you're their father, if you're any male relation who's older than them, but obviously especially if you're their father, and like keep that in mind, man. Like keep in mind, you know, there's people make the point a lot. You know, Carlyle did, Nietzsche did, Heidegger did. I mean, in very different ways, but they made the point that, um, you know, think about your activities and their resonance historically. Okay, and if you can stand for such things to, you know, to echo through the historical record, you know, so basically you know, if you'd be morally or aesthetically disgusted with yourself at, you know, the decision rendered at a critical moment, you know, that should give you pause. Well, in a more prosaic way, think about that as regards your children as witness. Okay, like, you know, is what you do around your children, and is what they witness something that makes them ashamed or disgusted and afraid of you, or is it something that, you know, makes them proud, and, you know, will give them strength moving forward and allow them to like develop into men in their own right. I mean, that's the best way I can think of to describe what I think is most important. But again, too, like I don't have kids. I mean, I guess people could. I mean, depending on who come at it, I suppose people could say I'm like the most immature man on earth, but I prefer to think of it as like, you know, I agree with my friend. Like I think my role is that of a shaman, kind of. You know, much of such things can exist in the present day. You know, but in terms of like hands-on like parenting stuff, I mean, I don't know, man. I never had a wife and kids. That's all I got on that.
All righty. Looks
Hard
like
question.
yeah, no, it is. It is. Someone's asking about your traveling plan since you did some of that
Yeah,
this year. Anything comparable for
actually, I do. I'm gonna in the spring. I'm going down to Virginia because there's an occasion there. Like a friend of mine, a friend of ours is getting married. I don't want to name him because it's not. I don't, you know, not going to publicize his business. But that's in the springtime, and I want to dip in before that into Baltimore as well as like Harper's Ferry and see some of the crew that I got close to out there in 2020. Then I'm going to go to Virginia. I'm going to swing over and see Pete Canones, who should be in Georgia around then. But I'm planning a Stone Mountain event, as I think I mentioned to you guys over the past year a couple times. So I want this trip where I go to the East Coast and then swing down, you know, kind of like Jackson's fighting the Creek War, I guess. Although I'm not planning to go on the warpath, but I want this to end at Stone Mountain, and I don't want this to be a mass event, but I am thinking, you know, if we can get like 20, 30 people out there, it's going to be by like invite only. It's not going to be like, I'm not just going to like drop like a freaking Instagram, like, woohoo, come to Stone Mountain. There's going to be like pussy and beer and like firecrackers. It's not going to be like that at all. So like, don't think that, you know, but I've got I want to see Stone Mountain 'cause I've never seen it before, but there's a few things I want to address there in terms of taking our mob and our movement kind of to the next level, just in terms of like formalizing our association. But that's kind of like the big one thing I'm planning now. Beyond that, I don't know. I'm sure I will hit other destinations, but it's a lot of time I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants. Just because it's like the last trip I made with you guys to Ameren, I heard about Ameren, so it slipped my mind, and I'm like, yeah, we should go. And then like by the 3 weeks later, like we were down there. I don't generally plan stuff months in advance unless it's something like I just described with like the Stone Mountain thing. So yeah, I will. I'll keep people posted about my travel plans. I'll be hopping around like I always do, man. And this winter has been great, man. Like just on Wednesday, one of the fellas he was in from Australia, like and he's staying down at Hyde Park. But that was great, man. He came in and met me for breakfast at Clark's, and we hung out. And 2 days before that, on Monday, another friend of ours from the Carolinas, he's been up here before. He came to see me, man. Like it's been great, man. And I shall reciprocate. And yeah, I'll get out and make a couple of trips, man. But the big one is going to be what I said. It's going to be Virginia, like Baltimore, Virginia, and then around in Georgia, and then Stone Mountain.
All righty, man. Pretty stacked schedule. Looks like thank you,
It'll be
TB.
fun,
thank you for the $5. He's I guess this is more of a fashion recommendation than a question. But...
the United Farm Workers.
But, thank you.
Why does it fit in with my aesthetic? Like because like people are saying like look the PLO because like my scarf or something. Like I don't know. I mean I mean that's up to you, man. I'll take one more question and I'm gonna raise up.
All right. Well, hey, you heard it here, folks. If one final testimony, and then we can. Hey, good to see Vingle on here. Our guy Vingle, an old head.
Yeah, he's a good dude, man.
I saw you in Jack Burden's chat. That was very cool. Spreading, promoting the show, so I appreciate that.
No, he's a good guy, man.
He's a great guy. He's in my chat as well.
Yeah.
For a minute.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the Wi-Fi. It keeps cutting out for some weird reason.
That was happening to me the other day, man. Like it might be the extreme weather. Like I don't know. But sometimes it's just StreamYard is just like it's just glitchy. But but yeah, I'm gonna raise up here, man. This was great though, man. And like I said, you guys should keep going. Merry Christmas to all. And yeah, I'll like I said, I've got a lot of good stuff in the pipeline in terms of the pod as well as shit, man. After right about a week, we at long last we're formally freaking launching the YouTube channel. So there's that. And I'll have day after Christmas, the day after Christmas or the 27th, I'll announce kind of in more concrete terms like what that's going to entail. We're gonna like start a little bit slow. I mean, obviously, because as time goes on, we're gonna raise our like production chops, just going to our learning curve increasing. But also, like as we monetize everything we get, I'm gonna reinvest into production. So I mean, that's not to say that it's gonna be like schlub shit like from jump, but with it, there's gonna be more content and more elaborate content as we go along. But I'm going to, among other things too, like I'm going to take a bunch of my older pod episodes out from behind the paywall. You're going to be able to access that there. Like stuff like my appearances on Pete Canone, you'll be able to access that on the channel. Stuff I've done with Scott Greer, stuff like, I just recorded with Jason Kessler, who's a friend of ours, yesterday, like shit like that. But also, I'm going to try to have fresh content on there like every couple of days, just like 3 to 5 minute kind of sit reps on the world situation, other stuff. And then like once a week, do something a little bit longer form, like maybe one of these streams or just like a dedicated episode, like 30 to 50 minutes about some about a designated topic. But I'm very excited, man, and that's I think like social media as it has existed is kind of dying. I mean, things are just like changing, but I saw even where that's not the case, that I think the future for us is a video based platform primarily. But yeah, I don't mean to cut this short, but I gotta raise up, and this was great though, man. I'll hit you fellas up tomorrow, and yeah, we'll reconvene after Christmas. Does that sound good?
All right, sounds
Sounds
good,
good, man. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, fellas, and Merry Christmas,
right.
everybody.
Thank you. All righty, well, there you have it, folks. I wanted to C123. I want to try and keep that in mind next time we have Thomas on the show. So don't worry if you want to tune in for a later episode. I'm going to try and get that to him. So sorry about that, but we'll. I saw some people were asking about Confederate museums. I want to give a proper plug here, if I may. I saw this on a nice individual. Let me. Am I able to pull up a Spotify link live on the show? Don't want to run into any difficulty. Okay, there. This was nice. So let me share this. One moment here. Little shilling here. For those of you that know, for those of you that are veterans of Cozy TV, Tyler Russell, former host of Canada First, has his own show, Future Nation. He's got a new playlist that I was checking out his earlier one. I think that was back in the summer. He had his summer Groiper playlist. Now we got a new one for the new season. So I would recommend everybody to check this out. Of course, Tyler's the man. So show the guys some love. Listen to the tunes. I think some of us could use some new music. It may be a little Zoomer. So fair warning. Maybe a little Zoomer. I don't know if the millennials in chat, some of the age disparities might get in the way of some of the enjoyment, but I just want to put it out there in case it does some good. So I want to give a proper plug to our guy, Tyler, who was gallivanting around in Tennessee with May, Thomas, just being a total stud. So I want to give the guy a proper plug. And thank all you guys for the support tonight. Thank you for stopping by at the Double R Diner at a late hour. So appreciate that. But yeah, American Populist, my guy. Yeah,
sorry for the boomer tech problems. Just happens, man.
The tech is affecting your age. People are gonna think this is not a real Zoomer. A Zoomer would never pop in and out of a stream, but rest assured, we can vouch for AP. And the guy is just getting probably some interference from Mossad or something. Who knows? Some kind of interference. They see Jack Burden climbing the ranks on YouTube. They see AP, and the distant right is full. They want to completely contain this whole side.
It's weird though, because the only thing that went out was just the Wi-Fi. Like all the power was working. It was. I don't know why that happens, but
yeah,
just seems weird.
These people, man, these people. Well, I kind of wanted to run it by you because I've been neglecting a lot of the 1960s John Birch research. I was curious if you had anything to go off for me to sift through in the next few days, because I would like us to do that episode. But I know that I just have like a handful of things that I'm probably going to dive into beforehand, not including Thomas. So were you I know you sent me a link to that guy who made a video about it, but have you been going through any kind of material or things like that recently?
No, unfortunately, I've gotten distracted with a bunch of other real life Christmas shopping and other things, but the things that I do know are gleaned from that video, just like other historical references that I've learned about this group. Obviously, them calling out what's his name again? They call the the guy from Kansas, our president from Kansas. What was his name again? I can't remember his name.
Kansas.
Yeah,
Oh my
he was,
goodness. Now I'm
forgetting
having,
his name now.
now I'm having the boomer moment. So fair enough. Fair enough. Oh, I think there was.
Oh, Eisenhower. Yeah, they called it Eisenhower. It was the founder. Yeah, the founder of the John Birch
Yeah,
Society.
yeah. There was
Said
that
he was a
conspiracy.
traitor to the Reds, which was pretty far back then. Which is just like they were already on the money back then about our ruling class. You know,
Right.
it was cool.
There's a question in here. I'm trying to. Oh, we got Fat Elvis Jr. in here. Thank you. Good to see you here. I know I skipped over to address some of the Thomas questions, but someone's asking how long have I grown out my hair. I don't. Feels like it's been months now, but yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about cutting it. I'll leave that to the chat if you think that's a good idea. I'm not sure. I'm just kind of ambivalent. You know, it's funny. Like to go back to Tennessee, I just feel like a fish out of water. There was even one person specifically who was like, I don't think this was an insult, but he was just, running it by me. I think a lot of people would probably take you more seriously if you blend it in a little bit more. It is a bit of it's a character trait that kind of stands out. So it's not to. I don't think he was critiquing it, but he was just saying it's a bit out of pocket. So yeah, I have been aware of that for a while, especially with AFPAC. All the Zoomers seem to have the professional cuts. So I don't know. I'm ambivalent, of course. I was a metal guy before all of this, and so maybe that's the identity crisis. That's the political identity coming to terms with the life beforehand. So who knows? Who knows? It's I know some people in chat here were very sympathetic to Thomas's look. So I don't know. I'm just saying that, putting it out there that these two identities are starting to address one another. So we'll see. We'll see. But I appreciate any type of feedback because the forelock. All right. Keep it. All right. Well, I appreciate it because that's the thing. It seems like everybody I meet, it's. Well, I guess you got like a Semi-Agog, you got Semi-Agog Thomas. It's a handful of people, and I don't try. Well, I guess I don't know if it's my place to say anyone else, but yeah, we're.
Yeah, I think we both know a couple people in real life, but
we're thinking it over. It seems like everybody's short hair. It seems like I'm the sore thumb. So all right, May. Because what was it? I think Nick said this on one of his streams. This was probably before Cozy. But I remember he said men are supposed to be anonymous in the sense that they have a certain aesthetic that is male. And then women are supposed to be the elegant, standout, long hair. And so it's almost like showing the difference on display, showing that the masculine and the feminine are distinct. And in the 70s, when you have all this androgyny, you got all this David Bowie stuff, that is almost confusing people and poisoning the well, so to speak. So maybe that's true. But I don't know. You look at some historical figures and they had long hair, guys, so it's almost like it's not really a fad if it's so historic that it kind of stands above a lot of the recent trends. You're not really mimicking the 70s, you're mimicking the 1170s, for instance. So maybe
well, traditionally men have had long hair. I mean, you can go back to Samson, right? Hair was seen as a symbol of strength and masculinity.
There you go. Hey. So which is it? What are we gonna do here? Turnip. Yeah, thank you. That's right. Yeah, Ryan Turnip Seed. Of course. But yeah.
Our favorite Okie. Yeah.
That's right. Hey, another Southerner to stay on topic.
Honorary Southerner. Yes.
Yeah. That's true. Vikings. Yeah. Thank you, May. But then you get into like the pagan type stuff. I don't know if I I don't want to be mistaken for that identity. You know, I don't want any of that kind of confusion. So gotta be careful with that. You know, you know, no, you know what? No, I'll withhold that. No, I was gonna, but never mind. Let me see here. I do want to plug American Populist. While I got you here, I want to go to your channel / Twitter, because I think Twitter is almost just as important. If anybody's wondering, you know, whenever there's a hiatus on the show, whenever there's these gaps, Twitter is gifting us with some Twitter Spaces. So I'm sure AP is probably seeing me in there more times than I should be. But for anybody who's, you know, is curious where to find some content outside of Loud Sound Epicenter, a lot of our favorite people are in Twitter Spaces. Shout out to Paul Allen, who's been hosting a lot of them pretty frequently, and I know May's in there quite a bit. So a lot of people who are not doing YouTube videos can be found there. So I know some people are ambivalent about Twitter. Some people say it's a waste of time. It's gone so downhill since 2018, but there's a lot of cool people still there. So I gotta pitch that. But while I got Twitter pulled up here, I want to share.
No, yeah, the Twitter Spaces have been fairly good actually recently. I like some of the more intellectual ones.
Yes, sir.
Especially with what's his name again? He's with Keith Woods.
Joel
Davis. Yeah, that was pretty good.
Juice Davis. Yeah. He had a wait a second. Where can I? Oh, here's your YouTube. I'll probably have to pull up YouTube, but there is the AP Twitter. Do I have it posted? Yeah, there we go. And then, of course, American
It's so funny, though, with Twitter. For a long time, I hated Twitter. I never made a Twitter account, actually, because I hated Twitter. This was during, like, the great NPC meme era. And that was a real big thing. So I made an account called Russian Bot, and they got banned instantly.
Really?
I just thought that was, yeah. I don't know why that happened, but I just thought that was funny.
Interesting. Well, there you have it, folks. Nationalism, not globalism. American Populist.
Yes. Some fine gems in there.
And also, I don't know if some people are confused. I was confused because I noticed this with my channel. Someone DM'd me. There is a videos, which is your recorded videos, and then there is live. If you go to the channel and you can't find some stuff, it's because there are two separate categories on the channel. So, for instance, if we go to my channel, if you go to the first page, it looks like I haven't made a video in 10 months. But if you just go over to the live section, it's a separate tab, there is all the content. So I was confused. I thought there was some shadow banning shenanigans happening, but it's just a little update, I think, for YouTube. So I don't want anyone to be confused and think we're slacking over here. We're trying to get back in the swing of things. So
no, I'm really get back into making some really good content on the channel. I'm gonna get to that 1K number soon. Hopefully.
There you go. Yeah, Jack Burden, man. Jack Burden just climbing the ranks. I'm jealous. This guy's a workhorse.
I know. I was ahead of him for a while, falling behind.
Also, I want to give a shout out to our guy, man. This guy, he clips the shows. He watches all kinds of content and then clips them. So it's very cool to have a guy like that out there. It's one of us. So you guys probably remember Mutant. He's out there and he's clipping shows, and including this one. So if you need little bite-sized content, if you see because I'm pretty overwhelmed by how Academic Agent I'll have a 4-hour stream, and it makes me not even want to start the video because I feel so small. But I mean, here's he'll do a 5-ish minute clip and then a 10-ish minute clip. So you can really kind of really digest some of the content from some streams that you probably missed. A lot of us are probably playing catch up. So that's very cool to have somebody like this out there helping us out here. So very cool.
Now, Sport the Clips channels, they do a lot of good work.
Let me, I can clip that here, or rather, link that in here in chat. So shout out to Mutant. Can we get some love for Mutant, our Hegelian viewer? There we go. Speaking of Hegel, I think there's also a Tyler Hamilton Hegel video. Let me link that in here. Thamster. Here we go. Philosophy of the Right, and that's also Joel Davis. So seems like people are really going all in on the content. So we love our guys. We love them. So yeah, Tyler Hamilton, Thamster. We love them. Well,
no, I have a couple of really exciting video projects coming up on the channel.
Is that right?
For the new year.
Do we get a little preview here? Is that appropriate?
Maybe a certain video about an African country that's legendary among our sphere in the works. Possibly.
All right.
In-depth conversation.
Excellent. Well, that's cool. Yeah. I'm curious. Some people might kind of feel black-pilled by the fact that a lot of the content, there's big gaps in between. John Doyle's got big gaps, Keith Woods. But to me, it makes me think about, with the new year coming in, you got to imagine there is momentum being built. There are, like you said, plans behind the scenes. So I can't wait. I can't wait to see what people got lined up. And especially with the 2024 election kind of on the horizon there. It's you got to imagine there's going to be some stuff there. So
we'll see which faction of the right is proven right. It's going to be a very watermark year, a watershed year.
Right. That is right. That's the other thing. There's a lot of factions that are rivaling one another. There's a lot of fighting, blood sports back and forth, and I respect people who are watching everybody and just kind of having a bird's eye view. Some people get kind of nasty on the timeline. We see it, but we don't want to throw our hat in the ring. People are already kind of saying what they're going to say online. So yeah, but like you said, we're kind of in a wait and see period as to who's going to be vindicated. So we'll.
I definitely feel like the content has gotten a lot better since 2015. If you were around for the original alt-right. So leaps and bounds, much more intellectual conversations that actually matter. So,
yeah, the intellectual stuff does seem to be having a renaissance. So that's nice that we have something to show for all these years. So that is nice. No brothers wars. Yeah, well, it does seem like inevitably a lot of the top dogs, so to speak, in the so-called movement. There, or maybe separate movements would be more appropriate. It does seem like inevitably there's going to be some sparring, but we'll see. We'll see who wins out. Well, all right. I feel like I'm kind of rambling here. I don't want to neglect Replay Gang. I saw Vingo was going to be a part of that, but American Populace, if you've got any parting words, you can go absolutely off in these final minutes here before we can wrap up here. Anything last to end on here?
Yes, a couple of things. John Birch Society was based and it was way ahead of their time. Called out the New World Order before it was cool. Before even Alex was calling it out. Really don't get the love on the right that or the actual discussion space for them that they deserve for the ground that they paved even back in the 50s, when it was the good times. Meanwhile, the seeds of our current social decline were planted already in the 50s. I feel like there's a lot of romanticism for the 50s, which I agree with. It's very aesthetically pleasing era, but the seeds of social decline were already there. Some of these fundamental questions that weren't being addressed. And we see that some American patriots were already tackling that in the 50s. So keep hopes up, We're going to win this in the end. And Merry Christmas is my final message.
All right. So, hey, what a good note to end on. For anybody who's confused of where to find Thomas, I know Telegram. He seems to have
Oh,
taken
yeah, that's right.
Let me. I just want everyone to be in the know that Thomas is on Twitter, and so I want to link that here, and I should probably link that in the description so that people know where to find him. And that is what we're dealing with at the moment. I think he's working on a chat for like Substack or something like that. I think he sent out an email. So, but definitely on Twitter, you can find Thomas's content. He seems to be pretty consistent at daily there, more or less. So, and then here, let me present the right here Thomas's Twitter account. So you can find that here. So thank you guys. Appreciate you stopping by for the Friday night extravaganza, American Populist, Thomas 777. Thank you for giving us the time of day, some time at the end of the week here. And I will see you guys. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what kind of content we got lined up in the next few days. But stay tuned. We're on Twitter, as I said. You can find Thomas and myself. I'll probably be in a Twitter space pretty in the foreseeable future. And very grateful for you guys to stop by tonight. So stay tuned. We'll be back in the near future. And have a great rest of your night. Thank you.
Indeed, thanks.